Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Ask an Atheist, the Q&A show with a guest who has escaped from faith. Today we have with us ex-Baptist Matthew Sabatine. How the devil are you, Matthew?
I'm doing well, John. Here, let me adjust my camera a bit. I just want to make sure everybody can see this behind me. This is...
That's your blog.
Yep, this is my blog site, The Common Caveat.
Yeah. Caviar. Oh, you mean the fish, the fish egg?
No, but that's kind of funny that you say that. It sounds like caviar, but it is caveat.
Yes.
So...
Well, I'm a bit late getting together because I was making an intro for this show and I accidentally closed the wrong window.
Oh, okay.
So I had the window open that we were going to use for this show, and suddenly it was gone. I couldn't get back into it because I couldn't remember my logins. So we're on a cut down version of the software, unfortunately, which means it doesn't recognize me. That's why it says powered by StreamYard up here, and it's only going to one platform, unfortunately. So it's all a bit of a disaster, and it's my fault simply because I pressed the wrong little red blob in the corner of the window. And never mind, because what we will be able to do is put it out as a podcast tomorrow when so we're not going to get, it's you and me. I'm afraid we're not going to get a lot of questions from people because we're simply not going out to the platforms that I told them to expect to see us on. Oh yeah, this is total incompetence, and it doesn't happen often, but it's happened tonight, so I can only give you my apologies.
That's totally fine. I have not experienced any inconveniences on my end, so I feel like you're doing a really great job.
Yeah, well, it's a very good software to use for guests because all they have to do, click, put their name in, and it works.
Yeah,
but that's why it's my preferred show software. It's very different from a meeting software. It's not like Zoom because Zoom it only goes out to a selected audience, whereas anybody who visits the platforms at the time can see us doing this. And I see we've got 3 viewers.
Oh.
Hello, viewers. Welcome.
Hey.
One of them's dropped out.
Okay.
Was it anything we said or just a tech failure? So what we're going to do now, Matthew, is talk about your escape, because let me just tell you a bit about myself, first of all, because I was lucky in that I never got inducted. I chose my parents carefully, and they weren't religious people. We were not a church-going weekly event sort of family. Well, the only times we went to a church would have been, not even at Christmas or at Easter, would have been for a wedding or for a funeral. And as a little boy, when I was young, they didn't take me to the funerals. So the only time I got to go to church was for the occasional wedding. So I'm lucky in that, I never got, obviously I was baptized and I had godfathers and godmothers before I had any, capability of realizing what was going on. But apart from that, I didn't really meet a religion until I went to school, when at that time it was compulsory for schools to hold religious morning assemblies.
Oh, geez.
Well, yeah, I know. This is the UK, and it's supposed to be a secular country, but it's not technically. I mean, most of the inhabitants are non-believers, and
Okay.
that was borne out by a recent poll which showed that I think 53% of us have no faith. But
Yeah.
historically, we've got, thanks to Henry VIII, we have an established church, and our monarch is the leader of it. And the ancient laws specify that schools should hold a Church of England assembly, unless they are sponsored by some other church. Like there are some Jewish schools and Roman Catholic schools, but the law says they've got to hold a religious assembly every morning, get the school all together. There should be a hymn, there should be a reading from the Bible, there should be a prayer.
Wow.
And that's what was still happening when I was a schoolboy. Since then, hardly any school obeys that law. It's still the law, hasn't been taken off the statute book, but it's disregarded, mightily disregarded.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Just to think about your country's history in comparison to my country, America, we are quite different as far as I'm concerned. To my knowledge, we have never had compulsory religious services in our schools, in our public schools. I mean, we have private Christian schools. In fact, I attended one from kindergarten until 7th grade. Now, I don't know what the grades are like in your country. Do you have like kindergarten through 12th grade?
Yep, we do. We have the same grades as you now. Yep.
Okay. Well, I mean, in America, we don't have monarchs. We do not have an established royalty. We have what they call democracy. Conservatives and Republicans say that we're based on a republic. Democrats will say that we have a democracy. I don't really understand all of the technicalities about that, but you know, I just want to convey the fact that I don't know what it's like to feel. I don't know what it feels like to live under a monarchy or a royalty, where in our public schools religious services are compulsory. Because when I was in 7th grade, I did 7th grade in private Christian school. It was a fundamentalist school. After that, I went to a public school, and it was pretty secular. Secular in the sense that, you know, every morning we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. But when I went to Christian school, we did a Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag and the Christian flag. You know, I think it was, and then we did a Pledge of Allegiance to a third flag, but I can't remember exactly what that was.
A third flag?
Yeah, some kind of third flag. I can't remember what it was. I would have to think about it for a while.
The state flag.
Say that again?
The state flag.
No, it wasn't the state flag. Because in America, you know, private Christian schools are very adamant about being free from government.
Yes.
No government control.
Yeah.
You know, private Christian schools do and teach whatever they want, whether it's proven fact or not.
Yes. You have a school district authority which is separate from the city government authority, don't you? Yes.
Yeah, separate from the civil authority government. That's right. Yep.
Yes. Mm. So the odd thing is that you're more legally secular than us, although we disregard our laws. But you're the other way around in that, although your founding fathers sensibly made you a secular nation.
They tried to, at least.
Well, yes. But as I say, you're the other way around, because what's happened since those days is the religious communities have tried to insert their particular faith into your government.
Exactly.
We started with it sort of top down. Our king told us we were going to have these laws, and your kings, your founding fathers, told us that you weren't. So meanwhile, our community, our proletariat have drifted away from disregard the laws, but yours is going up to try and build them back in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's fascinating to see that still happening today in the 21st century. Yeah, we are. I would agree with you that our government, our society is largely more secular than yours, even though I think our Christian population is bigger than yours. I think, yeah, I think maybe I don't know the exact statistics, but I think at least still half of America is professedly Christian. Even though a lot of us don't go to church anymore, the people of my age group don't go to church anymore. However, I still see a good number of us trying to be spiritual in some way.
Yes, yes. Well, the thing is that your country was begun by a lot of Europeans who wanted to get away from what they saw to be an unacceptable degree of liberalization.
Yes.
of the Reformation, the Renaissance and the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get away from that and start their new country with much more stringent religious beliefs than they found here in Europe. So all of our, not all of them, but a large number, boatloads of devout Christians left Holland and Germany and the UK, sailed across the Atlantic and set up their own communities of more fundamentalist Christians on the shores of the US.
Right.
Mm.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, much of what you're saying it sounds pretty plausible. But over the years, I have read quotes from founding fathers like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and trying to think of who else from that time period. Not Abraham Lincoln, but guys like that. Benjamin Franklin. Some of them were, they weren't fundamentalist Christians. They were much more liberal than conservatives today want to admit. Pretty. There is some evidence to say that Benjamin Franklin was an atheist.
Yes, I've heard that too. Yes,
and
but
some people will say that if he was a member of the Hellfire Club, how could he be Christian?
yes. Well, you're right too, in that the trend in the US now is away from Christianity, although it's still quite a small proportion. I think the nuns in a recent poll numbered about 20%. It's higher in your age group. The teens to 30s are bordering 40%, but overall, I think that 80% of the US is still about mostly Christian. Although it depends where you are, doesn't it? Because the East Coast and the West Coast consists of, if you stay by the coast and you don't go inland too much to the rural areas, it consists of a lot of very enlightened people. But then there's the Bible Belt.
Yeah. Well, where I live in Pennsylvania. And if you ever come to Pennsylvania, you might, if you drive down our roads and through our neighborhoods, whether they are cities or suburbs or rural areas, you would think that we are super Christian because there is a church on every other block. I'd say that there are 5 or 6, maybe even 10 different churches in every single town and city. However, whenever I go into these churches, I don't see very many congregants. The congregants that I do see, they are people in their 60s and 70s and 50s. you know, and no offense to those people, I just find it interesting, the age group differences between us. You know, uh, but you know, looking at it like that, seeing that it could be still deceiving because you know most people who I talk to, they still have some kind of spiritual belief. They believe in some kind of higher power or God, or you know, they think that they're not totally subscribed to materialism and complete atheism. You know,
They're not. They're somewhere in the middle with spiritualism.
yeah, spiritualism. That is a key term. Um, you know, I had recently talked to somebody who's trying to dabble in Reiki healing. If you've ever heard of that.
Yes, I have. Reiki.
Yeah, Reiki. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Mm.
So there are a lot of Eastern beliefs making their way over here. Buddhist beliefs, a lot of Wiccan beliefs. Wiccan's not Eastern, but you know, some Hindu beliefs, stuff like that.
Yeah, what do they call it? Mind. There's an expression, isn't there? Buddhist mind.
Mind-body dualism.
No, it's some sort of
The third
attempt.
eye.
No, some sort of attempt to achieve nirvana or something by, what do they call it? Mindfulness.
Oh, yes, mindfulness.
Mm.
And that's quite interesting because mindfulness is a very prevalent idea in the field of mental health. I actually work in mental health,
Mhm.
and I encounter the concept repeatedly, actually almost on a daily basis. The whole idea has become very secularized. Um, Now, I really haven't statistically and historically looked at all of the roots, but you know, it sounds very mystical when you think about it. It's definitely more philosophical than it is scientific. But I think a lot of people find hope and comfort in it. Um, you know, I think there is some realistic basis to living in the moment, focusing on the present, not thinking about the past and the future.
Mm.
It can be a great anxiety inducer. So I think that there are very effective ways to kind of take spiritual ideas and despiritualize them
Well,
to, you know.
I think of it as a sort of halfway house between being religious and being a nun, being not religious.
Yeah.
It's a journey. You've come from fundamental religion through moderate religion to spiritualism to mindfulness and eventually to, oh, the hell with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I told you my background. Can you fill us in a bit with your journey? How have you come to be where you are today and your consideration of religion?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, that is a complicated question, and for which I would like to give a simple answer and a breakdown, because there are so many pivotal points in my life that developed me into who I am and how I released myself from religion. I would say I finally did not give up. I finally gave up religion completely. I think when I was about 28. So I'm 31 now. I just turned 31 on the 12th of February, and you know, at 28, I finally decided that you know I really want to fully get into a very scientific way of thinking about life. So, like I told you, I grew up in a Pentecostal home. Well, I grew up with two parents who mixed Pentecostal teachings with Baptist teachings. And I attended a private Christian school that was called non-denominational, quote unquote. Even though we had a lot of Pentecostal beliefs. So thinking about these things, it can be hard to really nail down the roots and origins of these concepts. But when growing up, I attended a church where I was taught to believe in something they called it slaying in the spirit. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Slaying in the spirit and speaking in tongues. So,
Well, I've heard of speaking in tongues. Is slaying in the spirit anything like that business to do with snakes?
No, not at all. But I do have very passionate, aggressive beliefs against that. Thankfully, that only a small portion of Americans really believe in that nonsense. But slaying in the spirit is about, you have somebody pray with you. They put their hands on you or near you, and they pray for you to be overtaken by the Holy Spirit, and you will feel an overwhelming sense of peace that will entrance you and force you to fall down. And of course, you'll have somebody standing behind you to catch you.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen it. Now you mention it, I've seen it on video. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You have a catcher behind you.
Yeah, you have a catcher. So this kind of a thing is something that I would typically associate with people, evangelists like Kenneth Copeland, maybe T.D. Jakes, these huge televangelists who have large crowds for their audience. I mean, thousands upon thousands of people who will go to these services, listen to these preachers, and these preachers will pray over the whole congregation, and a lot of them will fall down in great numbers together. It's really it's really astonishing to see. So getting back to myself and how I was raised. So I would participate in these practices, and when standing with people and having them pray over me, I never really authentically felt an overwhelming sense of a force pushing me over to fall asleep. But I would watch my peers do this. All of them would fall over.
Yes.
And they would fall asleep. And, and I would actually try to interview them and ask questions. Like, I would ask, how do you know when to fall over? How do you know what you're feeling?
Yes.
How do you know that it's really the Holy Spirit overtaking you and not your thoughts or yourself in some kind of way? I was so confused as a teenager and as a young boy. And I was very disheartened to realize that I just could not experience this same feeling that everybody else was experiencing. They would always say things like, "Oh, I don't know how you know. I just know. I just let myself be overtaken by the Holy Spirit and I just fall over." I never could get a straight answer from anybody. Even the leaders who were trying to lead me in the practice, they would just say, "Well, you just know when you know, Matthew." And so it was a very astonishing feeling to feel left out from everybody else.
Yes. It's a bit like hypnotism, isn't it? The power of suggestion.
Yeah.
You're not a susceptible person. You're not so gullible, maybe.
Well, I would like to think that I'm not gullible, but I think that I am in many ways. My gullibility, I think, is evidenced by the fact that it took me so many years to finally get out of religion, and because I kept falling prey to a lot of mystical ideas, and I kept trying to participate in religious practices because I kept thinking that there was something to this. But when I was young, I finally got exposed to that whole idea, that psychological idea of being of hypnotism. I think it is a powerful thing. And people in religion, especially Pentecostalism, they will deny the whole psychological effect of hypnotism. They would say that it's not hypnotism, it's the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, like, it finally took me many years of just reading psychology to become very immune to these ideas about, something outside of myself overtaking me. Like, I don't know. But, and then there's the other concept of speaking in tongues, uh,
Yes.
where you are supposed to pray with somebody, and when the Holy Spirit leads you or overtakes you to speak in a non-English language, it's supposed to be a non-human, a
Yes.
non-earthly language.
Yes.
It's supposed to overtake you, and you're supposed to follow it and just speak gibberish. Um, Now they say that that to the human ears you're speaking gibberish, but to God and the angels surrounding you, you're speaking intelligibly to them, so they understand you, even though you don't understand yourself. And even with that, the power of suggestion and hypnotism really didn't have its effect on me even then, because I never felt like I was being overtaken by something. I could not shut off my intellect that wanted me to keep questioning. How do I know?
Mm.
How do I know it's really not me, and that it's something else? Because I cannot feel that loss of self. I cannot feel myself lose control to be able to feel something else overtake me. And I really yearned for that experience for many, many years, and I never could feel it. I could never feel it. And finally in my adolescence, I finally realized that this is just nonsense.
Yes.
Like, somebody is trying to deceive me. Humans are trying to deceive me through suggestion and hypnotism and some kind of psychological trick and placebo effect. And in my adolescence, I finally started becoming disillusioned with the nonsense. Even though I tried my best to hold back, I couldn't resist the um, what do I want to call it? I couldn't resist the knowledge that there was something wrong. I just couldn't put my finger on it. I just couldn't put, because when you're very young and impressionable
Yes.
and you're lacking in education and life experience, it's hard for you to put your finger on stuff like that. You're supposed to have adults and mature people who should lead you down the right path to be able to identify wrong things like that. But when you have adults who want to give in to just nonsense like that, how are they supposed to lead you? How are they supposed to be bona fide, reliable authority figures?
Indeed. It's bizarre, isn't it? The thought that you don't understand what you're saying, but the angels do.
Oh God, yeah. Oh my goodness, I cannot express how that had messed me up for so many years. Like, you can really make somebody feel paranoid
Yes.
by making them think that there is something else out there that they cannot see, cannot hear, cannot touch, cannot confirm through their five senses. There's
Mm.
something out there that still hears them and monitors them and
Yeah.
watches over them and wants to punish them for doing certain things or not doing certain things.
Yeah, it is sort of celestial closed circuit television, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it is one of the greatest psychological tricks out there.
Mm.
And I'm really passionate against that nonsense, because I know what it feels like to be paranoid about things like that.
Mm.
To be paranoid about angels and demons warring against each other around me, and demons trying to possess me. And then when you have adults who are poor authority figures in your life telling you that depression and anxiety and stress is actually caused by the devil and demons,
Yes, yes. Uh,
that is so.
It's
I mean,
gaslight. It's
yeah, yeah. It puts you in the realm of gaslighting, because it doesn't teach you effectively how to monitor your thoughts and to discern fact from fiction. And you know, like, Yeah, when you don't have authority figures who are educating you on the biology of
Mm.
anxiety and depression and stress, it becomes hard to really figure out what's going on,
Mm. Have you heard of the Recovering from Religion Foundation?
That sounds very familiar, but I already like it.
Well, I interviewed Darrell Ray, the founder of Recovering from Religion,
Yeah,
who started this organization 20, maybe 30 years ago. And it's got 800 people working, either employed or as volunteers for it, many of them with qualifications in counseling. And, Darrell himself is a psychologist. And so they are trying to rescue people who have been messed up by the sort of practices that you've been describing.
yeah. Well, I mean what you're saying about that organization, I already love it, because I'm very interested in this whole idea of recovering from religion and how we can do it.
Mm. Is that why
Because
you, is that why you work in mental health now, I wonder?
Yeah, I would have to say so. I'm very heavily interested in psychology and neuroscience and
Mhm.
biology because, um, well, I think the human mind, I should say the human brain, and thoughts are very mysterious in of themselves, and we as humanity, I think, are very underdeveloped on understanding thought processes and brain processes, and we really need to update ourselves on the science of this stuff to be able to combat against nonsensical ideas like the ones that religion wants to proffer before us. I think it's one of the surefire ways that for us to really overcome religion and to be able to process the trauma that a lot of us have endured um, when being messed up by these pseudoscientific superstitious ideas.
Charlatans. It's odd, isn't it, how they all want money, and yet
Yes,
yet God can't benefit from their money.
I know. I mean, why would an omnipotent being need your money? He's self-sustaining. If he's self-sustaining, why does he need my money?
Yes, yes,
So, and then money was another pivotal point in my I guess deconversion or my disillusionment with religion, especially when I was young, because my father, my parents and I, when we attended a Pentecostal church, my father was the first one to become disillusioned with the church um, soliciting for funds
yeah.
and donations
Mm.
from the congregants as kind of like not really in a compulsory way, you
No.
know, but
Yes,
but through the suggestion of fear that God
yes,
would be angry with you
yes,
if you don't donate, if you don't do what they call tithes. Have you
yes,
ever heard of tithes?
yes.
Yeah.
10% of your salary. Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was 10% of your salary. That's
Mm.
that's the exact number that I would hear throughout the years.
Yep, yep.
And my dad felt disillusioned after he did some research on the context of the passage from which that is mentioned in the
Mm.
Bible.
Hmm.
And he would say throughout the years that that law has been done away with
Yes,
um, through the abolition of the Old Testament laws. We no longer practice that anymore because Jesus
yes.
paid the full price, and we no longer have to pay tithes to the Jewish temple that no longer exists in our world of praising Yahweh.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, Now I'm not sure if I got the doctrine down
No,
pat,
no,
but
no. Well, you can pretty much read anything you like out of the Bible.
yeah, yeah. When you are so detached from an ancient context, you can find anything that you want.
Yes, yes,
No matter how much research you do, no matter how many authors and scholars you consult. I mean, all of them, they all seem to disagree with each other in one way or another, which doing a lot of reading, scholarly readings and theology and the history of Christianity throughout the years, that was another thing that really played a pivotal part in disillusioning me with the doctrines of Christianity. It's like I feel like Christians and religion in general, they're just too certain about what their sacred texts tell them is the absolute truth.
Yeah, absolutely. But it certainly is odd that a deity who can create a universe can't create himself a couple of dollars.
Yeah, right. So, and it was my dad, I think, who was the first person who ever introduced me to the whole idea of, if God is all powerful, why does he need your money?
Mm.
So I feel like maybe it was my dad who first instilled in me a smidgen of skepticism.
Yes. Yes.
Because ever since my dad left the Pentecostal church, when I was young, that's when, he imbued me with the idea, and I really could never let it go. It just,
Yes.
it fermented in me, and it fermented in me, and it never stopped.
Yes. So he did set you the example in the end then.
Yeah, he actually did set the example for me in the end, even though he really retained his faith throughout the years. I just, he stayed in the faith, but I took his skeptical idea and I just ran with it, and I really couldn't help myself.
Yeah. Well, we certainly do know where that money does go, don't we? Because we've never seen a poor pastor or poor priest, and some of the wealth that they display. The Vatican, for example, is hugely rich, and all of the gold and silk and all the artworks and everything. We know where the money's going.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Speaking of the Vatican, and the amount of money that they have and how they can employ leaders and attorneys to defend their ridiculous ideas, we know where the money's going in a sense, and when I drive through my towns and cities of Pennsylvania, I see these houses in which, priests and pastors are supposedly living. I mean, they have castles compared to what I have and what my parents had growing up. I grew up in middle class, and my parents we had our financial struggles. I mean, geez, I feel like that really helps to reveal the what do you want to call it? The turd in the punch bowl, I guess I should say, just to be frank and forthright.
Yes. But we have plenty of examples of mega rich pastors, don't we? There's, what's his name? Joel
Osteen.
Yes, Osteen. Yes. He's one of the castle owners. He certainly has a very expensive property.
Yep. Well, he has his own house, really expensive house that he lives in, and then he has his humongous church. I mean, the most humongous church that anyone could ever see or imagine. Yeah. I think his congregation boasts 12,000 people.
Yeah, that's a big church.
Yeah, that's a big church. So, when we have millions of people worldwide who are steeped in inescapable poverty, it's really, we definitely should question why these religious leaders are having such big castles.
Yes, especially as when there was it a hurricane? You had a disaster in his neck of the woods, and he instead of opening his church to house the newly homeless, he barred the doors.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about, I think that might be Hurricane Katrina that happened back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. I actually remember hearing about that, and that same thing also happened in a number of other big mega churches. Their doors were closed to the homeless and displaced and devastated people.
Mm.
So, and I gotta wonder now, what is happening in Texas with
Yeah.
the 2 million people who have lost power
Yes.
because of the snow.
Yes. Yeah.
So what are we doing with those people whose homes are being, destroyed
Yes.
because of, the snow?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
like it's and I know people of these churches, they'll argue that they cannot let so many people in because of legal reasons. They don't want to endanger people who could get hurt on their property, and that they'll imperil themselves with lawsuits and blah 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 blah. But I mean, don't these churches already have insurances that could safeguard themselves against things like that? I mean, if they're going to have congregants coming into their churches on a weekly basis, what if a congregant on in a non-disaster situation, gets hurt on the property, getting up out of a pew and tripping and falling and
Well,
hurting themselves?
that's another thing, though, isn't it? I mean, surely if they worship an all-powerful God who can protect, his children, why do they need insurance? Why do they need a lightning conductor on the apex of their church?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. How many terrible things have happened inside of church buildings? I mean, I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but a lot of pedophilia has occurred within the Catholic Church.
Yes.
Why can't an all-powerful God protect little boys and girls from pedophiles who
Yeah.
somehow they somehow fly under the radar of the Catholic Church, that of the overseers, who is supposed to be educated in detecting people like that. Which is why I don't know what is it about the Catholic Church that pedophiles like that get in? Is it because of their lack of education on psychology and social services? Or is it just the fact that they are blatantly ignorant and they have enough power and money and lawyers to defend the pedophiles that get in? That's my question.
Well, yeah, I'm not a psychologist either. We could only speculate about that, but it might have something to do with the fact that the church, the Catholic Church in particular, is not very friendly towards women. You can't be a priest if you're female, and not only that, but those who are priests aren't allowed to marry. So perhaps the level of frustration is exceptionally high in that population.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a psychologist either, and we could speculate all day about how it all happens, but for the sake of intellectual exercise, I like to speculate because I think it really behooves us to think about these things and to be careful. I mean, what if these priests, they're trying to escape pedophilia, they're trying to escape the war within themselves, and they think that if they go into the Catholic Church, they can insulate themselves somehow. I don't know. I mean, if they just become a monk and uh, distance themselves from society completely, maybe they can escape it. But apparently, they're not, because they're still doing these things that they shouldn't be doing. And I mean, let's face it, everybody knows it's wrong to do those things.
Yes, you don't have to be. It's not rocket science, is it, to work out that abusing a minor is not acceptable.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot that I could say about that. I don't know, trying to think about where I want to go from here, but I guess I'm saying all of that to really drive home the point that that we really need to educate ourselves more on science and psychology to be able to to detect these things. I feel like I really feel like sexual crimes of that kind would really diminish and lessen if we were more educated on science and psychology. Like, if we could understand human behavior more, if we could fund research to study human behaviors more, we would be able to know the signs and take care of them, before people get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. One thing though, the new reputation for paedophilia that the Catholic Church has acquired has really lessened their appeal in countries like Ireland, which used to be quite strongly Catholic. And up until recently, for example, they didn't permit abortion. But I think it was in January or maybe last year that they suddenly did away with that law. And now it's nobody wants abortion, but there are circumstances where it is the lesser of two evils. And it never was in Ireland. If you were an unmarried mother, you got locked away and your child was taken away from you. You were a disgrace.
Yeah.
And there's been cases of I think they dug up a cesspit of children's bones that was associated with a home for unmarried mothers, where they just got rid of, they neglected the children because they were bastards, and they just buried their bodies.
Oh my.
Horrendous.
Yeah, that is quite horrendous. I really believe that nobody really wants abortion. Nobody wishes for it. Nobody plans for it. It's just a very unfortunate circumstance that befalls an unfortunate woman who cannot afford to bear a child, for whatever her reasons are. I mean, and whatever her reasons are, those are her reasons that should be kept confidential between her and her doctor.
Yes.
And I mean, pregnancy, I feel like a lot of people are undereducated on pregnancy and what a woman typically goes through to just propagate her genes into the next generation. It's the amount of depression, postpartum depression, anxiety that she goes through, the bodily changes that she goes through, sometimes the infusions that she has to go through just to have a normal delivery and to survive. Like, I mean, there are great health risks and life risks to having a child. And, I imagine that it would make any woman feel like she could go crazy. And, to force a woman to go through something that she's not sure that she can go through, that can be torturous. So I can imagine how being forced into things like that could lead to disasters like, finding children's bones underground in a cesspit. It's like we as our society imposes so much pressure on women.
Yes.
And a lot of women today, they're crying out in desperation for liberation of some kind. And they're trying to tell people about this. They're trying to speak to the laws. They're trying to speak to the lawmakers. And a lot of them, they're struggling to express themselves because if they do, they're stigmatized. They are told that they are just whining, petulant, complaining people, and they don't deserve their bodily rights. And that makes a woman even more depressed. Because there are so many bodily changes that she already has to go through that we as men don't have to go through ever.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me that any woman could survive the pressure that she has to experience biologically.
Yes.
And then socially, the pressure, it just adds insult to injury.
Yes.
I do believe our women are psychologically and biologically built through evolution to sustain the pressures of having a child. But I mean, still, still give her a break.
Yes.
It's Geez.
Well, we're getting some comments coming in from our rather select audience. I think the cream has floated to the top of the milk here. We've got a few people who are sending us their thoughts, and we're getting some agreement. Look at this one. Catholicism unfortunately exacerbates mental disorders. Here's another one. People that abuse children are just sick. The Catholic Church attracts mentally ill people. I wonder why religiosity is so high in the US. Why are they so especially susceptible? I mean, in the modern world, ...
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, oh, I'm sorry if you want to read another one.
It seems the US are the outliers in the Western world when it comes to religion. Pretty much, yes. Australia is not very religious. New Zealand's not very religious. Japan isn't. Most of Europe isn't. So and Canada isn't. So it's just the US, really.
Yeah, I think Sweden and Switzerland, they are decreasing in religiosity too.
Yes, indeed.
So America is an outlier, and that fascinates me. It fascinates me and it burdens me as an American, and I feel like I want to do something about it. So that's why I'm so delighted to appear on your show. I'm hoping that I could say something to enlighten people, even though I'm just a peon. I'm not a powerful person. I'm not the most educated person on earth, but I'm hoping that I can say something that will help somebody somewhere. Because I feel the burden, I feel the oppression of religion on a daily basis. Anytime I go out into society and I see people, I see it in our language. I see it in the pain and depression and anxiety that people go through. There's something about human language that religion has infected. It has hijacked our language. Anytime we try to talk about morality, anytime we try to talk about unexplained experiences, anytime we try to talk about free will, and the nature of mind, brain, and consciousness, anytime we try to talk about self-help strategies, there's always this tendency to appeal to some kind of religious concept or norm or practice. Anytime people become desperate and they cannot make sense of certain things, they just appeal to some higher power that is oppressive, some kind of oppressive higher power that's going to punish them if they don't do certain things.
You're right. I liked your use of the word hijacked, because English is tangled up with Christianity. I mean, we all talk about heavens above, and if I sneeze, we have a 5-year-old in the house who says bless you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, even to this day, I still say bless you. Not because I'm feeling religious, but just because I'm trying to be respectful. But even in that regard, I can see how my language as an agnostic or non-believer, my language is still hijacked.
Yeah, I make an effort to say Gesundheit, which is the German. German just means.
Yeah.
The American dream and religious precepts are inextricably linked. So much so that most Americans see the desire to live out the American dream as a religious exercise. Oh, yes. We got some deep thoughts here. But we're coming close to the end of our show, and I want you to talk about the common caveat. Give yourself a plug.
So the common caveat, I started this website back in September 2020. And as you can see, caveat means caution. And common, means widespread. So I'm trying to promote widespread caution about particular beliefs that can be dangerous in society, and particular ideas that can infect our belief structures, our brains, our ways of thinking, our perceptions. And the common caveat is trying to most especially caveat against pseudoscience, superstitions, and really outrageous supernatural claims. So I have a bunch of, I've written a bunch of articles, maybe 2 handfuls of articles since September 2020, and my most recent articles are about aging and death, and something specifically called senescence. I believe you know about senescence. So our cells are programmed for death.
Yes.
Programmed by evolution.
You'd like a show I did some time ago, some months ago now, with Dr. Mark Darcy, who he lectures at a couple of universities, but his research is connected with death and senescence and how we might be able to delay or even prevent it. So I'd recommend you to look back through my archive and take a look at that. I think we were having such a good conversation, we overran our time.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, I mean, that's unfortunate. The time went so fast because there's still so much I could say, especially about senescence and prolonging our lives. I'm hoping that I can live to see the day where, we can start maybe manipulating our genes to really prolong our lives.
I think you will. I'm very hopeful for you. But this is how we came together, isn't it? I don't know. I stumbled on your Common Caveat blog, and I liked the way that you were trying to write complicated stuff to an understandable level for ordinary people, non-academic people, but you weren't falling into the sort of journalistic trap of hyping it, of making it gee whiz. You were keeping it cool and calm and collected and not exaggerating at all. This was a dispassionate delivery. I thought that was very scientific.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I do try to take these complicated ideas and simplify them in relatable terms. Unfortunately, there is often still a need to use those big technical words that people feel intimidated by, which is why I'm really passionate about, in trying to avoid that journalistic trap of exaggerating things and oversimplifying things. I'm trying to bridge this gap between the oversimplifications of journalism and pop science with the big technicalities of scientific journals. I'm trying to make scientific journal knowledge accessible to people. And I'm hoping that through that, I can expand people's vocabularies and help them to feel less intimidated by big words by encouraging them to actually use them, to actually become acquainted with what the intellectual scientific elite do amongst themselves only. Because, I mean, let's face it, these big words and big concepts are only really prevalent amongst them. I would like to see them become a little bit more prevalent among common people.
Yeah, well, in fact, the pandemic has done something to help people to understand how science works and to get away from their preconception that it claims to know everything for certain, which it never did. And it's educated them in what are real scientific terms, like vaccine is a real scientific term, like immunity is a real scientific term, like virus is a real scientific term, whereas Gwyneth Paltrow's goop isn't. That's not a real scientific term. Yeah.
Well, just to dovetail on that, I think that, we could avoid a lot of pseudoscientific terms like Gwyneth Paltrow's goop. We could avoid stuff like that if we would become more educated on the big words that are truly scientific, So I'm afraid that a lot of people fall into the trap of pseudoscience because they're not comfortable with the big words that are truly scientific.
Yeah, that certainly doesn't help.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, Matthew, you've been utterly fantastic.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to thank the few people who've been watching us for their audience. And tomorrow I will put this out into the proper platforms where we should have gone today.
Okay.
take the rest of the day off.
I will try. And you take care of yourself too.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody watching, please like and share and do all the things you should do for YouTube videos. Thank you.
And please go visit The Common Caveat. Like me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. So I'm gonna post this video on my website whenever it becomes available.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.